Oh, hey, I didn't see you there. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to my book club. So today I'm going to be reviewing a book that if you have been living under a rock or are just not on BookTube, then probably you have not heard of it. But for everybody else, today I'm going to be talking about the most talked about book I've seen on everybody's channel, everybody and their grandma's channel, Bunny by Mona Awad. This has got to be one of the most riveting yet frustrating books I've ever read in my entire life. I gave this book 3 stars at the end of it, but if it had been 5 pages longer, I would have given it 2 stars. If it had been 20 pages longer, I would have purchased a physical copy of it and mailed it to someone I do not like anonymously. It's all fun and games until the writer starts to sound like they are enjoying the smell of their own farts, if you know what I mean. There's going to be a non-spoilery section and then a spoilery section. But fear not, as usual, I will be warning you when these sections start. Okay, there's so much to get into with this book that I actually have several pages of notes over here. And unlike other books, which are much easier to talk about, this one is a lot. So I'm going to be referring to my notes, if you don't mind, because there's no way in hell that I can wing this. There's no way in hell that I can talk about this book freely like I normally do. I will need a guide, because this book was such a wild ride, and because there's so much I want to discuss, and so much I want to get into, and so much I don't want to leave out in the interest of having a fruitful discussion with you all, hopefully by the time this is over. So if you're still here, let's begin. So many people have criticized this book for being too weird. And another word I see a lot is metaphorical. But the thing is that to me, metaphor should be hidden in the subtext, you know what I mean? The things in Bunny are presented as a literal sequence of events, and you just have to wonder if any of it was done in the pursuit of any sort of meaning. A lot of this book felt like I was reading a commentary on things about academia and society and the world. But the world is a huge place, so it was like she was trying to convey 50,000 million different messages at the same time. It's like if David Cronenberg rewrote the script of Mean Girls and made it the best movie ever, but then decided to turn the third act into a stultifyingly dull slog. The central characters by the end seemed like straw men, and by the end they were still as mysterious and ominous as they were when the book started. Yes, Sam, Ava, the bunnies themselves. Like, oh my goodness, I cannot even begin to attempt to coherently describe this plot, so I'm gonna be leaving the Goodreads summary down below so you can just check it out there. It starts off very interesting, riveting, and creative, but then by the end it just gets so overkill it's exhausting to read about. It's like, the best way I can describe this is that the first 200 pages are great, then it took what was at best a short story or a 200, 150 page novella and stretches it beyond 300 pages. The writing gets so repetitive. And make no mistake, Mona Awad is a very, very talented writer. The way she's able to put in little jokes and hints of her own personality and her own humor, which I find to be very funny, in each and every sentence or dialogue that a character may say, is wonderful. But reading this book was like watching a stand-up special where the comedian runs out of jokes halfway. So they end up resorting to repeating the same jokes from their first and second act, but with all the epic punchlines taken out. So, if you plan on reading Bunny, I honestly do not know who I can recommend this book to. Maybe if you're a fan of the book, Grasshopper Jungle, like that's the closest I can think of with this, which also was one that I really enjoyed the humor of but got very tired of towards the end. I don't know what that dog is barking about. Maybe he's protesting. Maybe the dog is a fan of this book and is annoyed with what I'm saying. And if, like that dog barking outside, you are a fan of this book and are annoyed at what I'm saying, feel free to disagree. I mean, art is subjective. If you disagree, then I would love to hear what you have to say in the comments down below. So with that being said, proceed with caution if you plan on reading Bunny, because it is very weird and very odd and very strange and is not like the kinds of stories we are trained to read or appreciate. It's just so surreal and wonderful and frustrating. Okay, spoiler time. Spoiler time. So if you have not read Bunny and you do not want to get spoiled, then by all means, click off, read the book, and then come back and we can discuss. But if you don't care, then stay tuned because I'm going to be attempting to decipher Mona Awad's Bunny. Okay, so this book has so many themes and it jumps from theme to theme and gives you a narrative whiplash. And I'm gonna do my best to condense everything I think happened here, but forgive me if I am incoherent. But then again, maybe I'm not the incoherent one. Oh shit! Did I just go there? Maybe I did, maybe I didn't, I don't know. So I'm gonna read to you some quotes from Bunny. And these quotes encompass the overall mood and the overall type of story and the overall vibe we're gonna be getting from this peculiar elf of a novel. So this is the first one. Their smiles tighten. They look at me like they know I have a burning, slutty secret. I am willfully withholding, like I am denying them entry into my whore's vagina, and it's really a problem. Quote number 2. Describing an apartment. Okay, so Sam goes, I really thought it was just fine, though it didn't quite pass my suicide visualization test. Quote number 3, gender narratives. Quote number 4, the patriarchy of languages. Quote number 5, Odysseus was just telling me how much he enjoys Fellini films and the novels of Proust. So, okay. If someone ever says something like this to you, I dare you to try asking them what their favorite Fellini film is, and ask them to describe it, and watch their explode. And see if they describe it without using words commonly associated with art critique, like gravitas, or perception, or evoking the senses, and see how that goes. So the biggest twist of this book is that we learn that all of this takes place in Sam's head. It's a story about coping mechanisms and unchecked childhood trauma, first and foremost, is what I think that this book is trying to convey. It's also a story about 50,000 billion other things, be warned. So, okay, first, Sam's relationship with Jonah was something I found terribly underdeveloped. In the end, where they're supposed to be hashtag OTP, but we spend all of the book not rooting for them because Sam is mostly very nervous, and by very nervous, I mean she comes off to him and is very rude, and is not very kind at all to him or many other people in this novel. There seems to be some commentary on income inequality because the school is surrounded by poverty, or so the book says. There are some alleged decapitations and homicides happening rampantly outside the campus, but this is something that I interpreted to be all taking place in Sam's head. The reason I say that is because this could perhaps be saying that since this all took place in her head, maybe she got her opinions from the wealthy elites that she would surround herself with day in and day out. And I think she's taking a poetry graduate course, and she got in with scholarship, so she's not particularly a wealthy young woman, but the people she surrounds herself with are the ones that this book tries to mock as like wealthy art majors who have nothing to say but have tons of money and one fancy called degrees, you know? So basically these opinions that she gets from ignorant who are too dumb and genuinely believe that poor people are out there trying to eat rich people. So each bunny is assigned a new name by Sam. These names are Cupcake, Creepy Doll, Vignette, and Duchess. Each of them were assigned this name because of their personality type. If you can call it personality because they're all so superficial is what the whole point of the book is. So eventually Sam and the bunnies strike up a friendship and she joins their clique. And this is when it starts to get very Mean Girls. And this is really when a lot of the commentary begins, when Sam joins their clique. This is the part of the story I love the most, actually, because it talks about how collective ideology stifles individuality and uniqueness. And that's a theme I really love. A lot of my favorite books have this theme, and I was very happy to see it over here. But this is one theme among many, sadly. So as I said before, Sam is doing a postgraduate course over here, and I think it's for poetry. And the stories or the poems Sam writes are hated and ridiculed for everyone because they're apparently too raw, too dark, and too edgy. So Mona Awad certainly mocks the experimental approach of Warren, the school that they're in. And this could be a commentary on maybe how higher education as of late has gotten too postmodern and superficial, maybe, I think. I'll give you an example. We see this especially in the classroom that they have their workshop in. So this classroom is called The Cave, which I personally interpreted to be very Freudian and feminist, but it's actually called The Cave because it has no windows or clocks because they supposedly don't want students to write stories that are hindered by space and time. AKA plot. So we learned that the bunnies have sort of lobbied to have this professor named Ursula, who the bunnies refer to as Care, and who Sam refers to as Fosco, reference to the book The Woman in White by Wilkie Collins. And I apparently lobbied for this professor because this professor gets them and tells them that she likes their stories. So the only reason they wanted Ursula, or Care, or Fosco was because she gave them validation and hated Sam. And I suppose maybe Mona is drawing from personal experience here. She puts herself in the shoes of Sam and mocks the overprivileged kids at this school. Kids that she herself probably went to school with once upon a time. And then it starts to turn into a commentary on how academia seeks to dismantle empirical and provable logic and replace it with something that is not common sense. Again, this is something I can completely get behind. And I say this because of how the bunnies who operate with a hive mind only seem to praise Sam in an effort to make her lower her guard so that they can gradually change her because of her stories and how much sense her stories make and how little sense their stories make because these women have absolutely no shred of substance to them. And when they do praise Sam's work, it is so pretentious. They use words that film and book and art in general critics like to use, like compelling and vulnerable and gravitas. And here's a quote that comes out at one point, one of the few which made me bust a gut laughing. So this is when I think Sam is invited to that prom theme thing and those bunny boys are first introduced. One of them says, "Your beauty is nuanced and labyrinthine like a sentence by Proust." If someone described my physical features like that, I would take a rope, tie it around my neck, and then tie the rest of the rope around a tree. And then I would hop into my convertible with the roof down, obviously. And then I floor it. Bye, bitch! So, and then we get into how people with no substance attempt to hijack the substance of others and present it as their own without not actually knowing what they are talking about. And this also ties into this other theme I think Mona Awad is exploring about how we get into how people with no substance come across as fascinating to people with substance. I say this because when the bunny creates their hybrids, meaning their bunny boys, these men's head explode whenever they are asked to produce a single thought of their own. When Sam, a person with substance, creates her own hybrid from the stag, which was one of the plot twists here, he can actually go and live his life independently because his thoughts, his insights, and feelings belong to him. So the substance metaphor comes in again. They go to a restaurant and order mini food. Food should be substance that keeps us all alive, right? And it nourishes you if you eat it in the right proportions. But for some reason, they were paying the amount for normal food to eat food that was the size of their fingers. And I get what this is trying to convey, okay? I get that this is trying to illustrate a pattern of people with no substance saying things that sound smart but aren't actually smart, just like how they eat things that should have substance in this part but don't actually have substance because a food or a piece of food this big will not satisfy a full course meal and will not help you as a person, and you will die. So these bunnies, these four girls, they turn into an echo chamber of pretentiousness. Mona seems to be arguing that pretentious people think with a hive mind and they favor a more collective mentality, I think. So when Sam joins the bunnies, instead of referring to herself as I, she starts to refer to herself alone as we, because at that point she is indistinguishably part of this whole clique and everything they stand for, which is nothing. So it's as if Mona is trying to say that with this postmodern abstract school of thought, individualism and logic are sacrificed at the altar of acceptance and contrivance. So again, this is what I personally find to be the most interesting thing about this book, and I wish she'd just placed her focus on this exclusively. Maybe one could argue that she did. Maybe everything that I thought was focusing on something else was in the favor of presenting this message, but I don't know, and I've read many reviews of this book, and I don't think many other people know either. So So eventually, Sam makes her own hybrid, the stag, which I mentioned a while ago, and he turns into a man, and the man is named Max, and his head doesn't explode when he's asked to come up with a thought of his own. So these hybrids to me are like art projects. So as we know, art is an extension of the artist. We are the sum total of who we are and all our experiences, and Sam is a person with substance. Random thought, Ava, Sam's friend, reminded me a lot of Chloe from the video game Life is Strange. And the protagonist of the video game Life is Strange is named Max. And Max is the artwork of, or the hybrid rather, of Sam. So I wonder if Mona Ahmad is a fan of this game, because if she is, Mona, girl, hit me up, we're gonna be best friends. What I think this book is mostly trying to say is that you can only grow as a person when you expose yourself to different things. Like the hybrids of these bunnies, they couldn't speak for themselves, their heads would explode. And the irony of this book is that despite the fact that this group of bunnies had 4 brains, they only operated as one. And the one brain they operated with couldn't even conjure up a coherent thought because it lived in a self-validating echo chamber. But like, I mean, as much as I wanna hate this book, I must admit that despite my frustration, perhaps my frustration has come about because of what the point of the book actually is. Maybe a lot of the things I was complaining about was actually the point of the story. So this is a book I both loved and hated. For the first 200 pages, I was very happy with what I was reading, but it just got so tiresome, it just got so lackluster, and I ended up giving it 3 stars. Mona Ahmad is very smart, she is very unique, and I would 100% pick up any new book by her. And as a matter of fact, I think that if this film was adapted into a movie by Netflix, it would be a fantastic film and I would watch it in a heartbeat. But until then, yeah, I am very mixed on Bunny. Perhaps my thoughts on this book may evolve the more I think about it, but I think by now I've had enough time to think about it. But I don't know, all of us change, we are human beings, and we're open to accepting new things. But right now I really want to know what you guys thought. I see this book on Goodreads, I see that it's very polarizing, and I want to know what everybody thinks, how everybody feels, and how everybody reacted. So tell me what you think in the comments down below. Like, favorite, subscribe, and until then I hope to see you in the next video. So take care!